So Traci Irwin pleaded guilty to 2 counts of first-degree unlawful imprisonment. In November, she was sentenced to 2 years in jail on Monday. And the attorney, Frank Policelli, says that we have just sentenced an innocent person. And Frank Policelli is on the air right now with us via telephone. Good morning, Frank.
Good morning.
So that's your statement. If innocent, I guess the question would be, then why did she plead guilty?
Because she was made an offer she couldn't refuse.
Got it. And I think that people sometimes struggle with that. But
I know, and they always get the facts wrong and jump to conclusions, and that's all because of all the prejudicial pretrial publicity this case received. You know, she ends up getting indicted on murder, kidnapping, manslaughter, gang assault, 13-count indictment. She's looking to spend the rest of her life in prison, and so are her children.
Yeah.
So, you know, the district attorney dismisses the murder, dismisses the manslaughter, dismisses the kidnapping. He offers her 2 nonviolent felonies on back-to-back years in the county jail. She's denied bail on the murder charge, no bail.
Yeah.
And, you know, so she's got 12 months in. She gets back-to-back years. That's 16 months, okay? If she goes to trial in January or February and she's found not guilty, she gets out of jail.
Right.
If she accepts the deal in February or March, she gets out of jail, and it benefits her children's plea bargain.
Right. No risk.
Well, the risks are minimal.
Right,
Obviously, the risks of a trial were greater.
Right.
And she's got her children who probably had more exposure than she did. And I'm not going to comment on their cases because they have their own lawyers. But as far as my client was concerned, I'm confident if she had taken this case to trial, she would have been found not guilty of everything.
You know, her statement, and I want to read it. I had no knowledge, and if I had, things would have been very different if I had. Of all the tragedy that's happened to me in my life, if I had 5 minutes to redo something, I'd choose 5 minutes right there to save Luke because I loved him. Yeah.
It was a church.
Yeah.
You know, they try to portray this church as a cult. And that's, you know, that's as far from the truth as a frog is from feathers. Whatever you could say about any church, you could say about this church. I mean, every criticism that you have of this church, I can make the same criticism of the Catholic Church, okay?
Frank,
they say, well,
Frank,
you know, this Tiffany, she speaks to God. Well, you've got people that you make saints that you said speak to God.
Right.
That's fair. No, listen, Frank, that's a fair point. But they determined that this is based on what I've read, what we've reported here, and other media outlets have reported. They thought he was molesting the girls, so they beat him in the genitals with cords. I don't know of another church like that.
Whoa. Hold on a minute. First of all, you're mixing things up. What you have to understand in the context is this mother and father and sister beat their sibling spontaneously when the sibling and his brother were boasting about sexually molesting Sarah Ferguson's children, okay? Nobody had any knowledge that that was going to happen beforehand.
And I think it's important to note that Frank's commentary here this morning, correct me if I'm wrong on this, Frank, this is specifically to your client, which and she's claiming that she was asleep during this.
Well, she wasn't even there. She was on the third floor. Her dogs were giving birth to puppies. She was there. Here's the thing. The only evidence that they have, that they claim that they think they have, and of course this goes strictly against the presumption of innocence, is she knew there was a counseling session. Every religion has that kind of a procedure, I suppose. And she wanted to know what was going on because she knew that these boys had some problems that they wanted to be counseled on, okay? So she says, I want an update. So there were text messages going back and forth with her son and a telephone call where they said, well, this is what Luke and Christopher are saying. This is what they want to do. They were allowed to leave and come back. There wasn't any, where they were kidnapped or imprisoned or any of this other nonsense. That wasn't true at all. And so they assume that in the phone call with her son that her son told her about the physical beatings without any evidence whatsoever to support that. Okay, well, that's not what you do in the field of law. You base your case on evidence in which you can prove. And by the way, let's not forget that people are presumed innocent, and there's a reason for that. Okay,
right. Frank, I one thing that I think we've kind of glossed over here and haven't focused on, because this aura of the church, which is a cult, as being described by some. So we've kind of glossed over the fact that this is a mother. Let's take the sister out of the equation. A mother and father who basically beat their child to death.
Yes, and then they want to minimize their conduct and blame it on Traci Irwin because she was their pastor and she had control over them. What nonsense.
I don't know of any parent that could allow someone to convince them that it's okay to beat, not just, this isn't a spanking. This was taking a cord and beating and whipping the genitals to the point that things were disfigured. It's incredible what happened, and I don't think we can discount what somehow this father and mother allowed to have happen and participated in. It's incredible.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And that's who should share the most culpability here. You can't, they're trying to minimize their conduct by trying to put it on the church and say, "Oh, we were, controlled because of these people in the church." Well, that's ridiculous. It's ridiculous, and it's absurd to even think of anything like that. How can you strike your child? That's your flesh and blood. These two teenage boys, my God in heaven. I could never, ever think of hitting my kids like that.
Yeah.
Ever. I've never hit my kids. And anybody who does that, there's something wrong with them. And if you look at the evidence in this case, this guy, Bruce Leonard, he was a nutcase, okay?
I don't know of any parent that could not describe it that way. That how you could allow something like that to happen to your child. And listen, anytime on the other hand, if you hear of your child being molested, I can understand how. I mean, the first thought that would go through any human's mind
would. That's why Sarah Ferguson acted the way she did. She flipped out.
Yes,
those were her kids.
Right.
Her little babies were being sexually molested by her brothers.
Now, the story that has come out is that the sexual molestation, and we did talk to the DA about this, and he said, I got to tell you that at this church, the belief was that possibly even a touch or dancing or a kiss would have been considered molestation. So that would make you feel that it minimizes what molestation was actually conducted here by
that's not true. It was molestation. Okay, it wasn't kids. They tried to downplay. No. They were brutally, admittedly, sexually abusing them. And they said, well, there's no physical evidence. Well, how many times? I could give you a load of people that are in jail on sexual molestation without any physical evidence of any kind of sexual contact. Okay, the jail's full of them.
So, Frank, they're saying they did an examination. They're saying they did an examination. There was no evidence of that. You completely dispute that.
I don't dispute that there may not have been any physical evidence, but what I'm trying to tell you is you don't need physical evidence to have sexual abuse.
Yeah, and in this case, it is true on the stand. The boy who survived admitted to some sort of sexual molestation, and I was very interested, Frank, that they didn't pursue that to find out, okay, what type of molestation are we talking about? That testimony never really happened.
I didn't see the Sarah Ferguson trial. I know I've spoken with Becky Whitman, who tried the case, but it happened, and that's why Sarah Ferguson freaked out the way she did. And they want to portray this case as like hours and hours of torture of going on continuously. It didn't happen that way. And as far as my client is concerned, she had no knowledge. And they say, well, she could have prevented it. Well, if she knew about it, she could have probably prevented it, and she could have gone down there and taken control as to what was going on. But she had no knowledge of it.
Yeah.
You can't assume that she did.
Frank, the comment that they were brutally molested is based on what? Something that your client told you?
It's all the evidence in the case. It's from it's from Christopher Leonard's testimony. It's from the witnesses who were present there and their statements. It's throughout the record.
So you're saying it was full out molestation. It wasn't like a kiss that was distorted into.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well,
this is bizarre now.
It is, and but you maintain, Frank, that your client. So this would be an injustice, in your opinion.
Well, here's the problem you've got, okay, in the plea bargaining system, and this is going on more and more these days. And the Supreme Court has now taken issue of some of these plea bargains. Okay, look, Justice Kennedy wrote in a decision in the Supreme Court, 96% of criminal cases are disposed of by way of plea bargaining, okay? So now you've got to deal with the fairness of plea bargaining. You don't have a constitutional right to a plea bargain, but once plea bargaining takes place, you have to be fair. And what happens is, the plea has to be voluntary. Well, we'll let you plead guilty, and if you plead guilty, we'll let your son out of jail. We'll give your other son a lesser sentence. We'll give your daughter a lesser sentence. If you don't plead guilty, everybody goes to trial. Well, what kind of a choice do you have?
Right.
I mean, you're charged with murder.
Yeah.
You're 50 years old. You're looking to spend the rest of your life in prison. You hire a lawyer because you want to get out of jail on a murder case. You hire a lawyer because he's had like over 20, 30 murder cases. He knows what the hell he's doing. And you're facing an Oneida County jury where there's no guarantee you're going to get found not guilty just because you're innocent. How many innocent people in Oneida County have been found guilty?
Right.
Let's talk about Stephen Barnes. Let's talk about Joe Smith. Let's talk about Mark Scheidelman. I could go on and on, okay?
Yeah.
So there's no guarantee just because you're innocent you're going to win your trial. So you're faced with these decisions, and you have to make a decision, and so you're allowed to plead guilty even if you're innocent under a Supreme Court decision called Alford versus North Carolina. And that's what happened here.
Do you believe, I'll ask this as the final question, do you feel that this would have been different had this been a more established, certainly the church was Christianity, but had this been more of a mainstream church
hey, look,
where
all
this
I
had
got to
happened?
tell you about that is look at the priest pedophile cases in the Catholic Church, okay?
Yeah.
They got away with basically murder, okay? And the Catholic Church never was found liable for anything. They watched it, they whitewashed the whole affairs. So of course it would have been different if it was an established church.
Well, you'll recall that they tried to shut this church down, and that could not happen under the laws and the Constitution of the United States.
Look, they're a church just like every other church you have. You could start a church on the street corner. You can believe what you want to believe. You want to believe that St. Bernadette talked to the Blessed Mother and got a letter to give to the Pope? Believe it, okay? You want to believe in the gibberish that Bruce Leonard wrote and his beliefs? Believe it. But when you cross the line is when you get into the physical act.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the church doing it. This was a spontaneous act by members of the church as a result of their children talking about molesting their other children, okay?
Frank Policelli, attorney, defense attorney. In this case, an amazing case. Still, other members of the church are facing sentencing, and as Frank has said here, his belief is that in this case, an innocent person was sentenced. Frank Policelli, I appreciate your bluntness here this morning coming on the radio. Thanks.
Thank you. You're welcome.